I am here with two of my favorite people, and we met at a manifesting group. Like, actually, I met Belinda at some talk that I gave, and then we got together and talked about and created a Monday morning manifesting group, which we'll talk about a little bit later how we did that. And then I met you through the manifesting group.
Correct.
Yeah,
through Belinda.
Yeah, through Belinda. So it's all back to Belinda.
All back to Belinda.
So this is my friend Jen, and she is the founder and co-owner of Sacred Minded Studios. She also is a corporate mystic, which I love the sound of that, and an intuitive business consultant. And then my best friend, my other bestie, Belinda, who is a mediator, relationship coach, and you just published a book.
I did.
I know. Tell me about the title.
I did. So the title is called What Happened to My Happily Ever After, The Radical Approach to Revitalize Your Marriage or Divorce with Love.
I love it.
Nice.
Love it. Yeah. And it was number one I saw on Amazon for...
It was.
Is it still number one?
It's in the pre-order phase, so the book comes out on Kindle in August, and it fluctuates, I think, so we'll see.
So cool.
I love the title. It's
do
so
too.
fun.
Thank you.
So like I said, we met through the manifesting group, and we met every Monday morning for a number of years at 8 o'clock. There was a big group of us. We'd meet from 8 to 9 and talk about money and energy and how that changed us and how to work with it, and it kept us on track. You know, it kept me on track.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for a number of years, what was it, 4 or 5 years? And now we just meet occasionally.
Right.
Yeah. So looking back, it was a huge growth experience for me, with just hearing everybody else's money story and how other people viewed abundance and money and energy and how we all grew together. So what are some of the things that, Jen, that you took away from that the big things that we can share?
Well, there was a lot.
Yeah.
So I think the most important piece was how to be mindful in every situation. Is that there's so many what I call conditioning aspects that we're not even aware of. And I've always been a really great manifester of creating things, but it's been haphazard, and it's been really about accomplishing a goal and then kind of saying, this is it, and then wanting more. So that was kind of empty. And so with our Monday morning manifesting group and abundance was really about what is important to me, what drives my soul, what makes my heart come alive, and incorporating all of those things and just noticing that even though there's what feel to me like a lot of stop-starts, that there are really opportunities to really engage with how I'm showing up. Am I conscious? Am I not? And that abundance is an inside job. And we think that we know like everything that needs to come through, right? I'm like, whew, I've got a lot to learn. So I would say being in our group and learning from everyone else's experience in addition to mine, knowing when sometimes I would hit what I call the ball out of the park and go, why did that happen? And why is it not happening here?
Yeah.
And just kind of being in that space of presence instead of, forcing something. It's just being really present with the whole experience.
Yeah, that for me too is what I think it really helped me is every day, like all day long, every day being mindful of what I am manifesting.
Right.
Before maybe there would be one, I want a new car and I manifest a car or whatever it is, but it elevated me to the level that I was manifesting my life.
Absolutely.
Like I want my morning to be full of adventure and love, and I want my afternoon to be calm and relaxed, with a couple surprises thrown in there. Good surprises. But it was really setting the intention for how I want every detail of my life to be. Not necessarily how it looks in the physical world, but how it feels.
I would say that's the key right there is abundance is an inside job, yet really knowing how you want to feel is so important. And then that's what I call the vibrational piece, because if I'm not feeling in that space, then what's going to elevate me to that? And it could be something as simple as a cup of coffee, connection, and all of a sudden it just moves into the flow and everything just feels so good.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I call it the jet stream. I'd feel like I'd get on, I'm like, ooh, jet stream, zoom, and then I would get off and like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
So it's just knowing and discerning.
And being very mindful of what gets you on the jet stream and what takes you off the jet stream.
Right.
So that we can stay in the jet stream or the flow, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
You know, the energy, as long as we can, and recognizing the things that take us out of it.
Correct.
And maybe don't do those things, or be mindful that when you do them, it is going to affect, taking you out of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the other thing that became very apparent when we did our Monday morning group meeting is that I felt like a lot of times I was moving forward and I realized I was in a cul-de-sac. So you know how you have cul-de-sacs? So you're on the road and then you like get off, but you don't realize that you veered off and you're going around the cul-de-sac and you're like, I'm doing it. And then you're like, wait a minute, I've been here before. And then you start to realize, oh, I'm in a cul-de-sac, so get back on the road.
I've never heard that before. In a cul-de-sac, that is fabulous.
So it's being also very, I would say compassionate and forgiving when you realize that you are doing things over and over again and then getting yourself consciously back on track.
Yeah, that's a good reminder too, being conscious and forgiving and compassionate toward yourself.
Right.
Yeah, it's easy. I noticed that as a group, we were very compassionate to other people. Mm-hmm. It's good, you're on your path, you're doing the work. But then when it came to us, we're like, what the hell are you doing?
Right. Totally. I think one of the most surprising things for me, and it still surprises me, that this is one of the most challenging and yet exciting and in a way easy aspects of the work and discussions around abundance and the thinking is, what do I want?
Yes.
Like we probably spent I don't know, I feel like half of that first year was just even, and it comes with like the conditioning of like what we should want or how it should be, or to do it like this person or not like this person, to not get distracted by things that other people have that we think we should want, because that means you're wealthy or you're successful or whatever it is. So, and I find that that's still an ongoing practice, that it's like so many layers. It's like being in the cul-de-sac, getting back on the road, and then coming back in to really work at deeper levels of asking, what do I want? And then sort of the next step of that being how it's connected to my purpose. Mm-hmm. And how I feel like the question of what do I want was one that was sort of kind of ignored in my experience for much of my life, because I just felt like, I don't know, you have what you have, and then you do with what you have, and maybe you want something a little bit, but then if it just feels too hard or too out of the box or whatever. But I didn't realize how closely tied it was to my purpose, because I feel like finding my purpose was also something I was always like seeking, as opposed to discovering what it was that I wanted, particularly how I wanted to feel, and then recognizing that that was actually serving my purpose and how closely connected those were. So I think for me, the whole conversation around abundance and really being masterful and intentional about the experience that I could create every day were really tied in with those two elements.
Yeah, that finding out or recognizing what you want. Even now, it's because it's constantly changing. You get what you want, and then that drives other desires. Right. I have this, and now, oh my gosh, I didn't realize from this I could do this.
Right.
Well, and sometimes it's, I always think about, we can talk about it in terms of finances and money, but I also think about it in love and relationship. Obviously, this is what most people come to me, what they really want are deeper levels of being seen, being heard, being loved. But for many of us, we didn't really experience that. So it's kind of like this idea of what we want. And so we kind of go in that direction. And then when you actually get it and you feel that vulnerability, and so part of it then is like, ooh, do I still want this? Because it's also very uncomfortable.
Yes.
Right? So you have to re-choose. And then also I feel like when you feel, for example, really loved, or you feel really abundant, you enter into a different state. And from that place, there's another many layers of dreaming that you didn't have access to before.
Exactly.
Because you tapped into that.
Exactly.
Right.
And you had just mentioned about not knowing the feeling of love. Maybe we didn't see our parents in a good relationship, or our first relationships we didn't feel, we're young. They're not great sometimes. But we don't even know what it looks like. We don't even know how it feels. We have an idea from watching movies and society, which is, so hyped up and not realistic. But the same thing with money and abundance and being in the flow. We don't even know what it feels like. Mm-hmm. So you don't know what you want until you even experience that. Mm-hmm. It's like you're saying, oh, do I really want this? Yeah.
Right. And I remember you telling us, there's responsibility with that too. So early on when we talked about the money game, we played the money game, and we shared other forms about that. But this idea of like, when we would get into the millions or the hundreds of millions and playing the money game, the level of responsibility of who you have to show up to be a container, to hold that kind of financial abundance, let's call it. Do you want that? And it's not like, oh, it's just gonna, right? That's why most millionaires or most people who win the lottery lose it in a year, because they haven't cultivated that space.
Yes.
Very true.
Yeah. Well, since you brought up the money game, let's talk about the money game. And it's been a while since I played it, so you guys are going to have to help me out.
It's so funny because you were the one that was like, I don't like the money game.
So you start with $100 one day, and you can in real life spend that, but most of it is in your mind you're spending that. And you can't spend it on, you can't give it away. You couldn't pay debt either,
Correct.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And was there one other rule? I can't remember right.
You had to use it all in that day.
You had to spend it all that day. Okay, so the first few days, piece of cake,
and
obviously.
it doubles every day.
Yeah, so then day 2 you would be 200, the next day would be 400, and the next day would be 800. So those are all, like, to me, manageable numbers. When it started getting up to, like you were saying, like in the hundreds of thousands and the millions, like, what do you do with all this money? And it almost felt a little heavy sometimes. Like, oh my God, I got to sit down and spend $1 million today. But what I loved about it is the dreaming. Like I remember planning like a safari trip, and I had all this money, so I might as well take a private plane.
Right.
And really looking at how much does a private plane cost, which was surprisingly inexpensive. And then how much was the safari? And so you get in that dream state of anything is possible. And that's what I loved about the money game.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, and I think for me, what was exciting about it, uncomfortable and exciting about it, was the fact that it pushes against all of our limiting beliefs.
Absolutely.
Once again, like finding out the plane costs X amount, and then you're like, not only billionaires can fly in a private plane, but then taking that next question or that next step of, do I really value this?
Yes.
Like, even if I had $1 billion, would I take a private plane?
Yes.
I don't know, right? And then that's also uncomfortable, because that's, again, what do you want? It comes back to like really connecting to those core values.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because I feel like that ends up revealing a lot in terms of, I find it sometimes, even now, where I'll see someone who has something, right? And I will, immediately feel a little kind of that jealousy, a little like, or criticizing them in my head of how'd they do that or whatever. And then I catch myself, because then I will, that moment or maybe a few hours or days later, come back and sit, but would I really want that? If somebody just handed that to me, is that even, would I want to take care of it?
Yes.
Would I want to live in it? Would I want to whatever? And often, most of the time, it's no. And if it's still a yes, then it's like, okay, so then who do I get to be? And once again, it comes back, when you talk about inside job, it comes back again to that. What am I willing to do? Who am I willing to be? How am I willing to stand? And that work that you talk about on a literally day-to-day basis, is the key. But it does take some work, right?
It does.
Take some effort.
And it's consciousness, yes. Because I would say that core value piece in the money game, that's the thing that got highlighted the most for me, which was so surprising, because everything that I did tied me back to my purpose. And my purpose got really, really clear with working in those places and being in a place where I can be overly generous and want to give everything away. That restriction of not being able to give it away really had me bump up against a lot, because that's kind of the, what I call conditioning, or the expectation, or certain things. Yet if I went to my true heart, it's like, for what purpose would I want to give this away, right? And once I connected with that, I realized, oh, I can do that whether I have $10 million or I have 100, right? And it allowed me to step up in ways that I didn't even think was possible prior. So that was really, I mean, I think that's why I love the money game, is because it puts you in a place where you get to dream, you get to go deep, you get to bump up against those things that you're not even aware of, and then you're in a place where you can say, wow, I didn't realize that that was even there, and then start to expand it out. So it's kind of like, doing this, and the broader you get, the only thing that I constantly come back to is reminding myself about how far I've come, as opposed to, well, shouldn't I be out here already? And that is the place where I know I spend a lot of compassionate time with myself, which I'm not always very good at that.
But you know what? Let's take this moment, even if it's just for us, to recognize from where we were when we started that money game to where we are now. What is it, seven-ish years later?
Right.
So you at that time were even talking about your book then.
Yeah.
And now here it is published. It's like, oh my goodness. How exciting is that? And a whole new life. You've gotten married since that time. Your business has taken off. It's fabulous. And then the same thing with you. You didn't own Sacred Money Studios then.
It was an idea.
And
we started really formulating it and bringing it together. And quite honestly, coming from corporate America, even though I'm very entrepreneurial, I just never thought I could do anything on my own. And really coming in and partnering and going into businesses where it's about furthering the vision, the purpose, and the mission is really, really powerful. So all of that really got germinated, and the confidence was built in me to take more steps along those lines. And that's the place where I would have, even though I could dream it and I could have incredible visions, the next step of taking action, I was like, that vulnerability piece. Well, what if I fail? Well, guess what? Fail forward. Step into it as much as you possibly can. And as much as I do that, I still, every time I take that step, I'm like, oh gosh, waiting for the hammer to fall. And, there's some great wins with it. And there's also some times where, I think we all do that, right?
Life.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. That's life. Interesting if I look at my journey, because I, of course, was quite busy. I think I had Rose City Mortgage, and then shortly after I started Smuggle, too. So I had 2 businesses going at that time. And now I have neither one, and I sit home in my sweats and my T-shirts doing podcasts and working with clients. But I remember at that time saying to you guys, and I wonder if you remember me saying this, that all I want to do is get paid to be me.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, honestly, I just wanted to get paid to be me, and here I am getting paid to be me. So it's amazing. It's totally amazing.
Well, and I think that's connecting back with purpose. And I have to say, again, not to make the comparison of our journeys, they're very different. And we've made different choices about the kinds of businesses, and I don't have employees like you did and all of this. And I feel exactly the same. Like, I get paid to be me.
I love that.
In fact, and part of that is the better me that I can be, right?
Yes.
The more clear, the more intentional, the more purposeful, the more willing to do my own work and dive into those uncomfortable places, the more me I get to be. And really that, I don't like the word success. I think it can get caught up in sort of a patriarchal paradigm, like the word success for me. But I think it's more, the word manifesting, right, for me is the more I feel that the life that I dream and then the life that I see people around me dreaming manifests.
Yes.
And to me, that is, right, that's it.
Well, and it's also inspiring to look at the people that were in that group with us, Linda and Ren, and and how far all of us have come. And it's very inspiring for me to see, like, well, if Belinda and Jen can do this, and Ren can do it, and Linda can do it, I can do it. I'm in there too. So that to me was very inspiring to see how everybody else thrived too.
The thing that was so wonderful was starting the week that way.
Yeah.
It just set such a beautiful template for the whole week.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that if there were one thing that I really miss is just having that place to start. I mean, I do a lot of that on my own. It's just not the same.
Because we had all the energy together.
Absolutely.
When you add, I'm going to say women because we were all women that were there, but if you put 20 women with powerful energy together and you manifest something, holy shit.
It reverberated out to the world.
Exactly. Like, what's happening in downtown Portland?
We're rocking and rolling.
Yeah, totally. So do you start because I'm just thinking this, because I'm going to write a blog about this, about setting intentions. And asking yourself the questions, like, each morning. And I know I've said this before, one of my questions is, what's the most important thing I can do for my money today? What's the most important thing I can do for my soul today? Instead of getting bogged down with laundry and vacuuming and sending out silly emails that really you don't need to do, focusing on the most important things. But I do that sometimes, let's just say 4 days a week, not every day a week.
You're human.
I'm human.
I was going to say 4 days a week is actually really good.
But I'm thinking even of holding myself more accountable and putting it on my calendar the first of each month. What is the most important, the questions. What's the most important thing? My money, my health, my soul, my mind, all of it. And then doing it again. I think Monday morning might be the time for me to, this week.
Right.
And then this day.
I think for me it filters throughout my week, and that is probably a practice that serves not always as well, I think, as setting that Monday morning intention. What you make me think about is, like, it's literally like having a business meeting with myself.
Yes.
Right. Like setting out, okay, right, if we had a staff of 10 people working with us, what would we do every week? We would sit down and we'd have a business meeting and say, this is our intention, this is what we want to accomplish. What are a coach that I was working with last year talks about leadership practices instead of self-care. Now, he's a man, so the self-care is more the, again, not the matriarchy, but he talks about leadership practices, and they're literally ways to self-care so that those goals, that what you intention for that week can be supported. And it's not just, I'm going to get on 50 calls with potential clients. It's like, then I'm going to go meditate or take my bath or take a walk or go play tennis or drink, my water, whatever it is.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of clients lately, and this is clearly for me too, is probably, you see outside what's going on inside, where it's not a job anymore. My job is now my life.
Yes.
Before I could split it apart, and my job was my job, and I'd go and I'd do my job. But now my job is my life. There's parts of that. My health, my mental health, all of it, my financial health. And so switching over to being the CEO of my life, piece of fucking cake. Because you look at it different.
Yeah.
You look at it instead of, I'll get to that and I'm on the back burner, is I have to be on the top of my game to be able to share my energy. Like, I don't have the luxury of having a few days where I'm feeling really shitty, because I have clients, they're not coming for shitty energy. They're coming for top of the vibrational pyramid energy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's so phenomenal, though, when you become the CEO of your own life, because everything else just falls into its right placement. And actually, Belinda and I were talking about distractions yesterday, and how many distractions get in the way of what's most important. And I really appreciate that comment, because sitting yourself right square in the middle and having it ripple out and everything else, I know that intrinsically. Do I apply it every day?
No, but at least being aware of it.
Totally. And recognizing that, we talk about this as being an inside job, and we have to remember that there are so many influences outside of us that still want to keep people stuck.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not to say, when people say it's society or it's the economy, I just want to scream. Anytime I hear people use a reason like that is this overriding amorphous generalization about why you're not having what you want in your life, and I feel like there's got to be this recognition, because that comes with the self-forgiveness of, we are bucking against a norm. Like, we will come against, I believe completely, in complete integrity, where I show up in my work, in my family, at the school, to pick up my kid, wherever it is, that's me. Yes. Like, I want to be transparent, I want to live in that way, and a lot of people aren't comfortable with that. So part of the challenge, I think, as we're stepping into really seeing our lives in this way and recognizing that we can give ourselves permission to bring our whole self, to focus on that integrity of all the parts of our lives, so we don't have to be one way at work, one way with our family, one way with friends at church, or whatever it is. And it can be uncomfortable. It will, make others uncomfortable. And this is part of the discomfort of moving from the way we've done it until, right? But the joy and like the what is it? The pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's like, and that's the question, right? Do you want to live the way you've lived? You know those results, right? You know those patterns, the struggle, frankly, the limitations that I think most of us are like, I just don't want to do that anymore, because I know that experience and it's not interesting anymore. I want something more. I want that gold at the end of the rainbow, and it's going to be uncomfortable sometimes along the way to get there.
And being uncomfortable and fear doesn't kill you.
No.
It reminds me of like going on a diet. When I go on a diet, my biggest fear is I'm going to feel hungry. Then you feel hungry, and you're like, this is it? Like, this is what I was concerned about this? The same thing with fear. I think oh my God, it's going to feel so horrible. Then you do it, and you're like, oh, this is not that big of a deal.
It's kind of like jumping into a cold pool of water, right? The anticipation.
Yeah,
Feel the fear and do it anyway is one of my biggest mottos. Feel the fear and do it anyway, because it's not that that fear isn't present. It's there all the time. Is it going to hold me back, or is it going to be something that I recognize and propel me forward? And that, I think, I'm making friends with that, because fear will show up and I'll be like, oh gosh, it's fear. And I got to remember, just look it in the eyes and walk right through. And there's that piece of courage that just steps in, and when it does, it's kind of like when you're downshifting and then go into and punch it. It's so fun. I just love that feeling. It's the closest I can say to warp speed. Like being in body, it's like you just feel it move, and of course.
I love the idea of jumping into cold water.
Yeah.
Because we all have done that, clearly. And that split second when you hit it, you're like, and then you're like, oh, this isn't bad. It's like, oh, this isn't as cold as I thought it would be. And
it's that jolt to the system. Yet that jolt and that, initial, like when you hit the water and it shocks your system, it's kind of like a reset button, because then it's just a very different experience.
Yeah. So let's finish up with what does get you in the flow. Like when you find that life is, that you're out of the flow. What did you call it? The highway? The
cul-de-sac.
You're on the cul-de-sac, but you were like, when I get on the highway or
jet stream.
Jet stream, that's it. When you find yourself not in the jet stream, which I like that, because that just makes me think of just really moving in that jet stream, what do you do to get yourself back on track?
Breathe.
I know, that's funny, we all took a deep breath. So number 1, breathe.
Center, become really present. That's the number 1 thing for me, is breathing, centering, and just being where you are right here, right now. And then the steps for me just kind of start showing up. It's taking action that is the determinant whether it goes full into the jet stream or if it just kind of goes back and forth.
I think one of the practices we would do regularly in the manifesting group was a meditation, but super brief, right? So it's not like, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to learn how to meditate, but it's literally like getting into the feeling, like how I want to feel, right? And for me, I know in writing the book, as an example, my daughter put together this playlist of music, and it was literally like talking about conditioning and reprogramming. The second that I put that music on, it got me into the flow of writing. It's literally like I couldn't not write while this music was going on.
Yeah.
So it was a really interesting tool that now when I find myself wanting to write and feeling like I don't feel like writing, it's like, okay, just remember, just put that music on, and that because it centers it, and it does create a feeling in me of like, the coach I've been working with the book calls it the feeling state, right? What is that feeling state? So that would be one example, and I would use that with the book, but I would also use it, if I'm struggling a little bit in my house and I don't know, the kids are being annoying, or my husband's, sitting on the couch when I wish he was doing the dishes, or whatever it is. It's also just like tapping into, right, that loving, tapping into, for me, I can do it now just by closing my eyes and having a thought of a nice moment together, and then I'm opening my eyes and something is shifted inside. Nothing around me is different, but something shifted inside.
Right.
And now I can be back in the flow with my family.
Right. And I would say for me, it's appreciation. I will just randomly choose something to, like the pictures, and then I'll go into the really deep appreciation, appreciating that they were at my dining room in my old house, that, my husband Rob at that time took him and got him all framed for me, and then he came and hung them up at my new house, and just really deep appreciation for just random objects. And then from there, it just kind of spreads out. Well, then I'm alive, I'm breathing, I'm able to think here, all of that. So definitely appreciation.
Yeah, that appreciation is super.
Yeah.
That's a big key. I think that's what I call it, being present, is just really taking it all in. And when you said remember, that's actually one of my favorite words, is and then member. It's reconnecting, coming back to,
That's good.
ourselves, and then really moving forward. So,
yeah. Well, with that, thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Thank
You'll
you.
have to come back.
Gratitude for you. Gratitude for you.